Inside the Arena is presented by Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, Seattle's closest sportsbook.
Welcome to Inside the Arena, your source for everything off the ice, off the court, and outside the field of play. With your hosts, KOMO Sports Director Niko and KOMO Senior Reporter Chris Daniels.
39, baby.
Yeah, how about that?
Every week, 39 straight weeks with new content, new interviews.
That is a long time.
That is a long time.
Almost a full year.
It is almost a full year. Once we get to 52, last time I checked, 52 weeks in a year. Week 39, though, big guest, Mari Horita. She is a senior vice president with the Kraken, and I think she cares the most about her big title, the executive director of the One Roof Foundation. We talk at length with her about what the foundation does, what it means, how it's different than what the Kraken are doing, and an important day on the calendar. Because I don't know if you had this circled, but coming up, it's Kraken Day.
Yes, it is Kraken Day.
3-2 is Kraken Day.
It's perfect.
I wonder why they call it Kraken Day on 3-2.
30-second. Well, I mean, I know you know. But
Yeah.
I'm like, just in case somebody doesn't know, 30-second franchise. Hey, you know what? I want to just piggyback off what you said about One Roof and how great it is. You know, the greatest perspective I've gotten on what the Kraken does with that is certainly we see the stories. We do those stories, and we talk about it here at Inside the Arena as though, you know, I'm at probably 95% of home games doing live reports for KOMO, at least there to observe, whatever the case may be. And they always do every home game their Hero of the Deep.
Yeah.
Catchy jingle, although they changed it for this season. And, you know, they're always highlighting, you know, a hero in the community. And then the One Roof Foundation is doing some kind of donation, usually about $32,000 or something really helpful in that regard. And it's like, when you watch those and it's a different person every game or a different organization every game, you really get that perspective of like, wow, this has One Roof Foundation. Sure, they have their initiatives within the Kraken, but they're helping a lot of different folks in the community.
And she gets into detail about how it all started, how it's evolved, how it's separate from what the Kraken may be doing on a day-to-day basis. She's also involved in Memorial Stadium. A lot of ground that we cover with Mari Horita, who's the executive director of the One Roof Foundation, senior vice president at the Seattle Kraken. And we like to talk to people like her because it's all about what's going on off the ice, off the court, off the field of play, which means it's time to talk about what's good and what's bad off the court, off the ice, off the field of play. It's what we call Four Corners. Every week, Niko, take us to first base.
Yeah.
What's good?
I'm going to start with our friends at the Sounders because you and I have talked at length, probably since episode 1, about how 2025 and 2026 were going to be so crucial. Yes, for that franchise, but the sport as a whole here in Seattle with the FIFA Club World Cup in town later this year. And then, of course, the big one, the FIFA World Cup in 2026. And I think that when you really look at how you and I talked about this, how the Sounders really had to embrace this opportunity, that there's suddenly new competition in the Kraken.
Yeah.
And listen, all the teams like each other. It's not that they're really competing, but you're competing for people's hard-earned dollars at a time when people don't have a lot of spare dollars, right? And of course, we talk at length about how the Sonics are hopefully back in the next couple of years. That's another competitor for that money as well. But yet the Sounders have really done a nice job, in my opinion, at embracing this whole thing, getting the community aware of what the Club World Cup is. You and I know what it is, but you know, your average maybe non-sports fan at home is like, wait, what's the difference between the World Cup and the Club World Cup, etc. But they also did a really nice job in the offseason making additions on the roster as far as making this team even better to perhaps maybe stun some of these European powers that'll be here in June. And maybe, you know, in addition to the events that are, you know, outside their control, make these next 2 years a soccer renaissance, as I call it. I call it a renaissance, but it's never really left. It's not like it's a, you know, but it is maybe a little bit of a rebirth as the Sounders playing at that high level. So I like the way they started it, what they did this offseason, what they're doing in the community. They even nailed the community kit, the Sailor Sea kit. I mean, and they wore that in the CONCACAF match down in Guatemala against Antigua. So I thought that was really cool. I guess what I'm trying to say is they have taken this window. They've listened to Niko and Chris. I don't know if that's why they're doing it.
Oh, that's of course why they're doing it.
And they've really taken a nice big step and done everything right so far.
Well, I would say from a business perspective, they had a under-the-radar move this past week as well, with a offer now to say the first one's on us, giving away free tickets to people who have never been to a Sounders game. Interesting now at this stage in the existence of the Sounders MLS franchise that started in 2009 that they're giving away free tickets. That does say something. As we've talked about on this show, the attendance levels, now, the new car smell has worn off. The new stadium smell has worn off. It's interesting. They're giving away free tickets, and they are really making an effort in these next 2 years. This is all coordinated. The idea of getting people who are casual sports fans to come back to Sounders games and get excited about the franchise with these two big events the next 2 summers.
Well done. It's the perfect time, and they're backing it up. Ask me that question again, and the longest season ever ends in November, December. But I think they're doing everything right, and hopefully it pays off for them.
Well, I'll tell you what else is good, and it's one of the things we like to talk about on this show. How about the TV ratings for the 4 nations?
Yeah.
10 million in the U.S., highest rated NHL game in years, and that was during a time frame that has historically been the All-Star game for the NHL. It's going to be tough, I think, for people to think about the NHL not doing that event again. I've seen some talk here in the last few days that maybe this was a one-off because there will be the Olympics and the World Cup. But I think there's going to be enormous pressure now in the NHL to say we're not going to do NHL All-Star games anymore based on the tremendous ratings that they had. And that's not including Canada. And it was a dream scenario for the NHL league office to have the U.S. and Canada in that final match, lived up to the potential that everybody thought it would have. And then the other game in Montreal with the 3 fights in 9 seconds, that got everybody fired up. In terms of a dream scenario for the NHL, it was having the U.S. and Canada play twice and those TV ratings numbers. And I think it'll be interesting to see where the NHL takes it from here.
Well, you talk about those inflection points and capitalizing on it like the Sounders did. Look for the NHL to do the same. This is a big moment. The fact that they share that same All-Star weekend with the NBA. Granted, the 4 nations went longer than a weekend, right? But, everybody was watching USA Canada and not the skills competition or the dunk contest. That may have been unheard of even just a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
And certainly maybe you won't see that again based on what you were saying about the future of it, but they nailed it. They did a really great job.
They absolutely nailed it, and it wouldn't surprise me to see if the Professional Women's Hockey League does something similar to grow that brand, grow that
big
sport
coming up.
And I think that'll be interesting to see because that would definitely be a U.S. Canada scenario that would grow the sport on the women's side. But yeah, all these other leagues now are going to have to look at, hey, what did the NHL do that we can do during an All-Star weekend? Because All-Star games across the board, it seems like, with the exception maybe of Major League Baseball, have just seen massive erosion in the viewing public.
Well, and maybe basketball can take a cue out of this. We saw the passion that was there with the Olympics last summer. The documentary on Netflix is getting great reviews, the Court of Gold thing there. And so and maybe that's because it's only every 4 years. Certainly the NBA is a bit of a different game right now with guys taking rest days and things of that sort. So maybe they don't want to do something like that in their week off, right? But there's passion there, right? When you're talking about Team France against Team USA, and there's obviously other matchups there as well. But maybe you see the NBA follow suit. That would be cool to see.
Well, what don't you like this week?
This is a pet peeve of mine, and I've ranted about it on this show quite a bit. And it's, listen, if you want to just call it something broad here, it's the state of college sports. More specifically, you've got the SEC and the Big Ten holding their big meeting to talk about potentially reseeding in the college football playoffs. I don't have a problem with the reseeding part. When you're talking about Arizona State getting the bye and they were, I get that. I'm not upset about that. What I'm not liking in this whole thing is that it's the Big Ten and SEC having this separate meeting and kind of charting the course. It's like, well, the ACC, the Big 12, they have bids here too. And I read an article the other day that said the only thing standing between the Big Ten and SEC taking things over is ESPN and Fox. And I'm like, didn't those guys kind of start it with the dismantling of the Pac-12? It was Fox that was, first it was ESPN that wanted the SEC to go after Oklahoma, Texas. Then it was Fox that, needed the Big Ten to counter because that's their product. So they went for UCLA and USC, and then eventually the Huskies in Oregon. And it's just, there's so much about, we can talk about some of the good things in college sports. And it's just, you look at this and it is quickly, if it's not already there, becoming this little power play with the SEC and the Big Ten. They just want to control everything. And what you're going to have soon is just a little bit of a regionalized thing that, some of your Rust Belt states in the Big Ten and the southeast corner of the country are going to be the only ones that are truly, truly passionate. And Chris, you know this. You're a Coug through and through. Some of the Cougs I know are even kind of checked out. Like, well, it's not the same. It's not. And you hope you don't see that because, it is a special thing to see football in the Palouse or to see football at Husky Stadium. Now, Huskies have a seat at the table. It's a little bit different. But I just hate this whole, we're going to have our secret meeting.
Yeah.
And we're going to chart the course. And it's like monopolizing right in front of everybody. And it's thrown in everybody's face. And they're kind of having this facade it's for everybody. No, then have everybody there.
And 4 automatic bids, this whole thing that both of those leagues, both of those conferences want to have 4 automatic bids here. I don't need to see a 4th place Big Ten team or a 4th place SEC team taking on somebody else. I mean, that's really not what a playoff
That's
should
where
be
they're
about.
trying to get to.
I know.
And you're going to lose. And that's my point about losing interest at some point. The northeastern part of the country, the West Coast, for unless one of the 4 teams out here, like Oregon, Huskies, whatever, are really good, then you're going to lose a lot of interest. And it's because it's just a money grab, and it's being thrown in our faces, and they don't care.
And there's a question too with UW getting a full share now with the Big Ten. How is this all going to work out for them in another couple of years?
Yeah, and you hope for the best.
Yeah,
they got that seat, but are they going to ever be on the even playing field as the Michigans, the Penn States, the Ohio States? I don't know.
Well, you know what else I don't like this week as we bring Four Corners to a close. And Niko, you're the one who pointed this out to me. The report that the U.S. travel system is not ready for the World Cup or the Olympics, meaning the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. The report from the U.S. Travel Association, written by a group of former government officials and industry experts, pointed to the infrastructure that's aging, the sluggish visa processing times, outdated security technology. It's obstacles, really, for welcoming visitors, not only to the country, but to Seattle. We've talked about this so much with the World Cup in 2026. So the U.S. Travel Association is saying, simply put, we're not ready to host the upcoming mega decade of events that will draw millions of domestic and international travelers. This poses risks to our national security and hampers economic growth. The report estimated that 40 million, that's 40 million people, could visit the U.S. for the World Cup, the Olympics, and the Paralympics, the 2025 Ryder Cup, and then America's 250th birthday. And so, with everything else going on in the world, when we talk about federal budget cuts, and we're not going to get too political on this show, but this is a report that's coming out at the same time that if you're somebody with the World Cup organizing committee in the city of Seattle, this is like a screaming headline for you right now. Like, oh my, this could be problematic getting people here.
Well, and it is a concern too, right? I mean, it's obviously a concern based on this report, but you talk to a non-sports fan in Seattle about the World Cup, like, oh God, I'm not looking forward to that traffic and things like that. When was the World Cup announced? To come to the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, right? And we're still here a year out, and we're having these issues. I just couldn't we have done something?
Well, this is going to be something to keep an eye on. I mean, visas. I think a lot of people take it for granted coming from the U.S., going to other countries. It's not so easy the other way a lot of times. And I've heard 18-month lead times for people. So, hey, you're going to find out where your team is playing from some other part of the world, and you're going to say, hey, I want to go. You may not be able to get that visa because the schedules aren't going to be out until later this year. So something definitely that we will keep an eye on is something that is definitely happening off the field, off the pitch.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk, as we do every week, about the Supersonics, that team that left in 2018. There we go. Oh, I said 2018. I know my dates. I'm just reaching for the buzzer, and I screwed it up by a decade. But 2008, yes, we like to update everybody on the situation with the potential return of the Sonics to Seattle. I think the update this week is Bruce Harrell has apologized.
Yeah. Well, there's that, and I love that. First of all, I love that he apologized to you.
Yeah.
That was kind of a mean joke.
Yeah.
But I also like what Adam Silver told PJ Carlissimo. We know PJ's Sonics guy. He said, listen, we want to be back in Seattle. We love Seattle. And he was candid. He was like, listen, we've got this ownership situation in Minnesota. It's everything we talk about here. He was like, we got the Celtics. After that, he promised, though, he said, after that, we will turn our attention to expansion. The question for all people watching and listening to this is, well, when's after that? And that's what you and I have chronicled. So I like that at least it's still being talked about after we kind of had that bummer that nobody even asked the guy about it at the All-Star break. At least, PJ, guy who loves Seattle, still here, had him on and talked to him about that. So that was cool to see. And, hopefully that all comes to, at least the next step soon. So a few more people can forgive the mayor for the joke there.
Yeah, and in case you missed us last week, and how dare you for missing us, to get you up to speed, Bruce Harrell, the mayor of Seattle, doing the State of the City address. He pauses during the address, pulls out a basketball, says he has an announcement to make. Everybody realizes what he means by that, and then he says, just kidding. And there were groans in the audience. He, the following day, on KOMO News with me, apologized, said he realized it was a bad joke and understands why a few people were upset by it all.
Yeah, well.
Lesson learned.
Lesson learned and move on, and hopefully that does become a point where people can just say, oh, yeah, remember that? Because we got our team back, and it's not a big thing.
Well, we've learned a lot of lessons so far from the Seattle Kraken.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
How you like that for a transition?
I do like it.
And they have started up a foundation. They've been doing a lot in the community, and it's the One Roof Foundation that is run by Mari Horita, and she's run it from the start. You will hear what she has to say about their plans in the future and where they're going to take it from here, and Kraken Day immediately following this message.
Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, Seattle's closest sportsbook, is your place for a true in-game betting experience. Download the Snoqualmie Casino Sportsbook app to get in on the action while watching your favorite games at Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel. Details at snowcasino.com. Seattle's closest sportsbook, Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel.
One Earth Foundation it's a 501c3, it's a public charity, and it is the philanthropic arm of the Kraken and Climate Pledge Arena. And it was really part of the enterprise's original commitment and vision to do something positive and powerful for this region 6 years ago. We were really fortunate, I think, in that respect, in that oftentimes a nonprofit or a social impact piece is like an add-on or something that comes later after the larger enterprise has been formed. But this was always from before day one, part of the plan, part of the vision, and so it's been really integrated in what the organization is all about. 6 years ago, when we were talking about One Earth Foundation and trying to build it alongside the team and the arena and everything else that we were doing, we're really focused on impact and trying to figure out how can we have the greatest impact. And we are a small organization. We have to raise all our money every year, and we knew that if we tried to be all things to all people, it would end up not having much of an impact for the community and certainly not doing much for our brand. And so we decided to focus our efforts on 3 impact pillars in particular. One is helping to increase access to play, so play equity for young people who are furthest from access and opportunity. The other is to help end youth homelessness in our region, working with thought leaders and also nonprofits in our region. And then the third is helping to advance environmental justice. And what we mean by that is we think all kids should have clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and clean and safe places to gather and play. And this last pillar really ties into the arena's focus on climate and sustainability. And so that we brought that in to the fold that way.
Why did you want to get involved in this? You've been in it from the start, and you were heavily involved in Seattle's philanthropic community. You had that background, but this was a new thing at the time, an NHL team, and the NHL team is going to start up a foundation. I mean, what was appealing for you to get this going from the ground floor?
Yeah, well, as Todd often tells people, I don't have a hockey background. And when I met with him 6+ years ago, I was at Arts Fund at the time. One of our donors, they said, "Oh, you need to meet the CEO of the new hockey team." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, there's a hockey team coming to Seattle. You should meet him. It's a new organization, and at Arts Fund, any nonprofit, you meet with any C-suite you can." And so I got a meeting set up with Todd just to talk about what he was doing, talk about what we were doing. There was no ask involved. And we spent the entire hour talking about the work he'd done at the Seahawks, at Tampa Bay, and just his vision to do something really powerful for this region by bringing a hockey team here. And I had talked about what we were trying to do at Arts Fund and really expand uh, support for an understanding of what the art sector looked like because it really was evolving, our population's evolving, so that we could generate more support for a much broader range of arts and cultural organizations. And I didn't expect to have a lot of conversations after that, and they called me the next week and essentially offered me a position. And I said, "Doing what?" And so we talked a little bit more about that, and it was an opportunity to not be the mouthpiece for someone else, but to actually help design and envision the values and the social impact strategy and goals, and that in any situation is such an incredible opportunity. And then to do it at a hockey team of all things, because I, like many people said, "What, a hockey team?" But if Todd, our ownership, our leadership, and they're out of the box thinkers. They're big thinkers. It's not. Yes, it is about a hockey team. We hope the NBA, but it's about much more than that. And how can we give back? And how can we um, leave this place better than we found it? And to be part of that from the ground floor, it's an opportunity of a lifetime.
And how is this foundation different than what we've seen with other sports franchises? I think about the Sounders in particular with the Rave Foundation, but organizations around the country, professional sports organizations, they always seem to have a foundation of some sort or philanthropic enterprise. How is this one different, or how has it evolved over the last 6
Yeah.
years?
Yeah, I think sports philanthropy overall and social impact and community engagement across the sector, across leagues has evolved. And that has been driven in large part by consumer demand. That the consumers of today and of tomorrow, perhaps more than prior generations, are going to invest in, engage with, and rally behind organizations, sports teams or otherwise, where there's some values alignment, but not just values alignment where you're actually demonstrating a strategy and intentionality and authenticity and transparency and having impact. It's not enough to say we support the community, which of course, no one says we don't support the community, but then what? And what does that mean? Because it's a very broad statement. It can mean very different things to different people. And so to have some thought behind what that means. And because we were new, I mean, being new, has its challenges, obviously, but it also has the luxury of not being burdened by old thinking and status quo and the way things used to be. And because, as you know, we had such out of the box leadership behind us. So you say, okay, what are best practices? What have we learned from the past? What does the future look like? And to take the time to talk to communities, to talk to foundations, to talk to other sports teams, and then build that with a really forward-looking, future-looking perspective is we felt like it was a huge luxury. I will say in Seattle, and we talked to all the teams, different teams and their foundations before we put ours together. There is a shared understanding of this evolution. And you mentioned the Sounders in particular, and their organization, not their just foundation, has a whole social justice framework. So we are fortunate in this region to have teams and players and owners and fans who understand that sports occupy this really unique and powerful sphere of influence, and that we should be thoughtful about how we leverage that. So it's, we like to think we're different, certainly, and um, we are trying to listen to the community that we're serving. We're trying to eliminate the power dynamic of, the donor versus the recipient, and we really want to see about partnerships. But I will say that Seattle sports team nonprofits probably are cutting edge across the country, across the leagues in this way.
This all sounds different than the philanthropic arms of teams in the past, where that's who you would call to get like some item procured or some free tickets for some fundraiser or anything. This is much more detailed.
Yeah, and we do that too. That's really more of a team thing. I mean, that's team. We have a site where if people need auction donations, you go to that, you fill out a thing, and yes, of course, we're going to do that too because that's very important. But like I was saying, just looking at the impact, where can you have impact? Where can we fill a gap? We're not, we're a small organization. We're never going to be the biggest funder. So, and then just to be a third party funder, yes, there's an element of that, but is that really the highest and best use of what our resources are? I mean, we think there's other things we can do.
And you even had another thing on your plate recently, and it continues on, and that's Memorial Stadium under a one roof stadium partnership. I want to make sure I get that right. Titling has been different and had been scolded on that. But you've had to fundraise on that and get people involved and get community leaders involved. What has that process been like, and where do we stand in the process?
Yeah, and that's a great example of the type of enterprise that we aspire to be, that we strive to be, and that we, from the very beginning, said, that's part of our promise to this region. So just for those who have not been living Memorial Stadium for the last 2 years, One Roof Foundation, the Seattle Kraken, and Climate Pledge Arena combined to form One Roof Stadium partnership to then work with the Seattle Public School District and the city of Seattle to redevelop a 77-year-old school district property that's on the Seattle Center. And like any other 77-year-old facility that hasn't had upkeep and investment over the years, for the last 30 or so years, it's been a problem. It's fallen into disrepair. It hasn't been able to serve the purpose for which it was built, for all the students in our region, and also it really hasn't, I think, honored the students whose name are on the wall, the memorial wall outside of the stadium. But after 30 years of fits and starts and conversations, a couple of years ago, the district and the city came together. They issued an RFP for a third-party developer. We responded to it, and in looking at it, we realized this is not a commercial endeavor. This is not mini Climate Pledge Arena. If we do this is entirely pro bono. This is a civic gesture, donating, $1 million worth of time, and also, as you mentioned, raising $30 million to close the gap of what was available in public funding. And it is, I think, another great example of many great examples of the types of public or cross-sector public benefit partnerships that have made Seattle great, that have made Seattle what it is, where you have leaders from private sector, from the public sector, from philanthropy, and from the nonprofits come together and say, we have a problem. And we have to kind of put our interests to the side and come together and work toward a shared North Star. And just like with what we're doing at the Kraken, our nonprofit, and all of our donors, we couldn't have done this without the donors. And so, like the last year, as you mentioned, we've been fundraising from the private sector and have just been overwhelmed, honestly, with the response and the grace of these very quiet, largely very quiet donors who, once they heard about what we're trying to do and they're aware that it's been a problem, they're like, yeah, we want to help. It was never a negotiation. It wasn't, well, we want to help, but this is what we need in return. It was like, we're in. And at very, very, generous levels. So we are very heartened by that. We're humbled by it, really, and we want to do right by the donors, by the youth, right by our community. So we're getting there. We're almost, over the finish line. But that $30 million benchmark was huge, and I cannot say enough about just the grace and generosity of our corporate donors, of our foundations, of the individuals in this community.
Yeah, it was interesting how many different foundations chipped into all of this. And really the last hang up on that is just some final paperwork with the school board and the city, right?
Yeah. Yes. Uh, and that's been, like, these processes are not easy.
As you know.
Well, they're not quick, but it's so important. It's not going to happen without that. And so it's like I said, all these different leaders coming together from different sectors saying, okay, this is going to roll up our sleeves and get this done for the future of our kids and for the future of our community.
And speaking of the future, how about that for a segue? Kraken Day. Well, yeah, why? What's the number all about? Gee, I'll play dumb for a second. Kraken Day, 3-2. March 2nd. What's that all about?
Yeah, well, Kraken Day is a celebration of our original 32,000 deposit holders, but really all of our fans who brought the Kraken to life. And what I mean by that is not just bringing a hockey team to our region, but through their generosity as well and support of One Roof and the Kraken, making the difference that we have been able to make in just 4 short years. And so the Kraken Day game is actually on the 1st, March 1st. It's an opportunity for us, like I said, to celebrate our fans and our corporate partners and to thank them, as well as an opportunity to highlight some of our volunteers, and then certainly our nonprofit partners and the different programs that are made possible because of the generosity of our fans and our corporate partners. As I mentioned, we're a 501c3 public charity. We raise all of our money every year like other nonprofits. We're separate from the team. So, we raise our money and then we start all over the next year. And the vast majority of our support comes from our fans and our corporate partners, whether it's through direct donations, in-game anchor auctions, 50/50 raffles, mystery pucks, Kraken Common Threads, merchandise, whatever that is because of their generosity that we have the impact that we do.
So that'll be a big day.
It'll be a great day. It'll be really fun. Like I said, we'll be leading up to it with different storytelling videos, articles, and then obviously some of that in game as well. And then for our anchor auction, we have the fan favorite things basket, which is where the players and their significant others put together very personal items and experiencing that means something to them. I know there's going to be a team signed guitar in there. There's a fishing trip with Coach Bausma. And then for the dog lovers, I believe Jared McCann is curating a special package there. So definitely worth checking out. It's on our website, onerooffoundation.org, and then you just go to the anchor auction and register. And just like any other online auction that people have participated in, you get a text and you see what the items are, you see where the bids are. But it's pretty fun.
Mari Horita getting applause
She should.
for that conversation.
Yeah, great conversation. And again, One Roof Foundation does so much in the community. We love to see it.
And they have a lot of things planned in the future. There's a question of, yes, if the Sonics come back, how is that incorporated into everything? You heard she's involved with the Memorial Stadium project. I mean, there's a lot that she's got her hands on and doing a lot behind the scenes. And that's who we like to highlight on this show.
Yeah, that's what our show is. And it's cool to hear all that stuff that's going on in Seattle Center.
Yeah, a lot right down the street. Hey, you got any final thoughts for the final buzzer?
Yeah, listen, it
still works.
It's like it's running out of gas a little bit there. No, and this isn't like some of the rants I've done or like I did earlier in the show about the conferences and college athletics. This is more of just a hang on a minute. And I know I've done this in our final buzzer before, but what makes me say it today is when the commissioner, Adam Silver, said those comments to PJ Carlissimo, we posted some of it on social media. We talked about it on KOMO News. And I was just surprised. Like, it was just an overwhelmingly negative reaction. Now, that's what Twitter is these days. I get that. Like, I'm not, like, trying to get sunshine and roses and a million likes. No, I thought that hearing the commissioner give another solid update, like, hey, listen, I know you expected it by now. We want to be in Seattle. We love Seattle. Here's what's got to happen first. I mean, that was about the most clarity we've got in the situation since he talked to you in September. And yet most of the people replying to her were just like, this is disingenuous. It's this. I'm like, it's none of those things. It was just, it's the latest update. It doesn't mean we're going to have to wait a little bit longer. Unfortunately, yes. But when you've got the commissioner of the NBA, and as we've talked about on the show, it's not totally like his sole call here, right?
Yeah.
But when you've got the commissioner of the NBA saying, hey, listen, we love Seattle. We want to be there. We got to just take care of these couple things here. and then we'll turn to expansion. I mean, that to me is good news. And it should be perceived as anything different is a little mind-boggling. I understand it's been a long 17 years. Don't get me wrong.
Who's counting?
I'm not talking about that fan at home that's mad at the NBA still. I'm not talking about that fan that loves every time Oklahoma City loses. You guys, that's not you at all. It's the whole, like, saying, oh, this is that, thinking that update's not anything good. Just hang on a little bit longer. And hopefully, they take care of that stuff soon. Complicated process to sell an NBA team and to sort out an ownership situation with former Mariner Alex Rodriguez and the T-Wolves, as we've talked about in the show. But just hang on, and let's see what happens from here. Just don't give up the faith just yet is the message here.
And who's been hanging on is Bill Fesh, doing a great job.
He's waiting. He's like, Niko, shut up.
He's ready to hit stop record. Hey, David Lee, take us out.
You've been listening to Inside the Arena with Niko and Chris. Please subscribe on your favorite platform. Until next time.
Inside the Arena was presented by Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, Seattle's closest sports book.